The sirens cut through the fluorescent hum of the pharmacy like a blade, and before anyone could blink, an elderly black woman with trembling hands was pushed against a shelf of cough syrup while a voice barked, "Ma'am, stop resisting," even though she wasn't. And right there, before you look away, before the truth twists, hit subscribe and stay with this story. Because what unfolded next exposed how fast assumptions can turn cruel, and how one quiet mother carried a secret that would shake an entire police department to its core. Because her name was Lillian Brooks, 72 years old, church hat proud, cardigan soft, the kind of woman who called everyone baby and clipped coupons on Sundays. And the accusation was absurd on its face. Dealing. As if she were a kingpin instead of a grandmother picking up blood pressure meds. But the young officer who slapped the cuffs on her wrists had already decided the story in his head after a pharmacy tech whispered about suspicious behavior, meaning Lillian had asked too many questions about prices and paid in cash, and the plastic cuffs bit into her thin skin as customers filmed and a manager shook his head like disappointment was a civic duty, and Lillian kept saying, gentle as a hymn, "There's been a mistake." But mistakes have momentum, and soon she was in the back of a cruiser watching the glass doors slide shut on her dignity. And at the station, the charge ballooned from confusion to intent because a pill bottle in her purse, legally prescribed with her name on it, was misread, miscounted, misrepresented, and the room smelled like old coffee and impatience as a detective with tired eyes asked her where she got the pills, and she told him the truth, and he heard what he expected. And when she asked to make a phone call, he sighed as if mercy were a budget item, and she dialed the one number she knew by heart, the one she never used for help, the one she saved for emergencies only. And when her son answered, she didn't cry, she didn't shout, she just said, "Daniel, they think I'm a criminal." And the line went quiet, because Daniel Brooks had spent the last 12 years teaching himself how to make rooms go quiet, how to listen for lies between breaths, how to keep his badge invisible until it needed to be a mirror. And he was FBI, counterintelligence, the kind that moved without headlines. And when he asked where she was, he didn't raise his voice, but something in the station's air shifted anyway, like pressure before a storm. Because while Lillian sat in a holding cell with a bench colder than the metal bars, the paperwork began to wobble. A clerk noticed dates didn't line up. A supervisor frowned at a body cam clip where Lillian's wrists were already behind her back when resisting was shouted, and a rookie whispered that the pharmacy had a history of calling cops on the wrong people. And then Daniel arrived without sirens, without an entourage, just a suit that didn't wrinkle and eyes that didn't miss. And he didn't flash his credentials at the door. He asked for the watch commander by name, and the commander felt his stomach drop, because you can tell when a man knows your job better than you do. And Daniel spoke softly, asking for the arrest report, the probable cause, the chain of custody. And as he asked, he learned, because he always did, that the tech who raised the alarm had been reprimanded twice for bias complaints, that the detective skipped a verification step, that the officer's body cam had glitched during the cuffs, and the story twisted again when a pharmacist finally admitted the pills were misread because a new label printer jammed and the room filled with the sound keyboards backpedaling. But the twist nobody expected was Lillian herself, because when they brought her out, apologizing in fragments, she didn't accept it right away. She asked for water, she asked for her purse, and she asked why it took her son's job for the truth to matter. And that question landed heavier than any badge. And Daniel watched the officers squirm, not with anger, but with calculation. Because this wasn't about revenge, it was about record, and he asked for the footage from the pharmacy. And the manager tried to stall until Daniel mentioned a federal civil rights review, and suddenly the footage appeared, showing Lillian patient and polite, showing the tech's eyes harden, showing the moment bias became action, and the case unraveled fast. The charge dropped, the cuffs cut off, the apology typed. But the night wasn't done, because news travels on wires. And by morning, a reporter had a tip, and by noon, the headline said, "Elderly woman wrongfully arrested," and by dusk, the department held a press conference that tried to sound contrite without admitting fault. And then Daniel stepped forward, not naming himself at first, not naming his unit, just naming the problem. And when a reporter asked who he was to speak, he finally said it, calmly, and cameras clicked like teeth, and the chief's smile froze. And the twist inside the twist was that Lillian didn't want a payout. She wanted training, policy changes, accountability, and she wanted the pharmacy to post the good footage and own it. And when the city offered a settlement, she asked that part of it fund bias training led by community members, and that request confused the room because they expected anger and got resolve. And weeks later, an internal review disciplined the tech The detective was reassigned. The officer entered retraining, and the department revised its arrest protocols. And the pharmacy chain changed its escalation policy nationwide, and Lillian went back to the same store on a Tuesday morning wearing the same cardigan, not to prove anything, just to live. And a young cashier recognized her and whispered thank you. And Daniel watched from the car, knowing the work never ends, knowing that power is loud until it's quiet, and that the quiet is where change hides. And if you stayed with this story, if you felt the turn in your chest when assumptions collided with truth, then subscribe and keep watching. Because stories like Lillian's don't end at the station door. They ripple, they teach, they demand better. And somewhere between the sirens and the silence, an elderly woman reminded a system what justice is supposed to sound like when it finally listens.